There is a question that most people never even think to asking when it comes to your money and finances. But once you ask this question and come up with some very basic answers, then it can help you solve a lot of your monetary issues. Why? Because when it comes to your finances, awareness is king. The other day, an old friend, very good friend of mine, calls me up, and he sort of does what he always does every few weeks or a couple months. He starts to vent. When things are really good, of course, he explains everything in life that is amazing and everything that's happening and how he's doing so well. Of course, when things aren't going very well and he's on this downward spiral, financially and life-wise, then of course he feels the need to vent that. And I guess I must be a good ear for him because this happens constantly. I thought to ask him a question. I said, you have all these ups and downs. Life is sort of like a roller coaster, but for a minute, I would like you to look at it like a sliding scale, like one line, and you're kind of like that dot on that line. On one end is, broke, poverty, struggle. And on the other end of that sliding scale is wealth, success, comfort, security. Are you closer to comfort and security, or are you closer to broke? He thought about that question for a minute. Where am I on that sliding scale of success? And what do you think he did? Well, he answered, but of course he lied, right? Which is what most people do. They're kind of lying to themselves, really. He thinks he's lying to me. And I said, where do you think you are? And he said, well, I'm right in the middle. I'm exactly in the middle. And I said, really? I said, I'm not sure you're understanding the question, because what I'm saying, and let me clarify, is there's this sliding scale of life, right? And there is the broke end where you're struggling like crazy, and there is the end where maybe you've achieved some level of wealth, security, and comfort, right? And peace of mind, if nothing else. And I believe that we as human beings, part of the working class going through this existence called life, are somewhere along there, but somehow we're always 2 or 3, maybe 4 chess moves away from being closer to one side or the other, or maybe even achieving one side or the other. I then went on to explain to him why I thought this and where I thought he really was, because most of the time he wasn't in the middle. In other words, he wasn't making these moves that 1 or 2 or 3 moves and he's so much closer to security. He would make these moves that wherever he was always brought him in the opposite direction, and then he would struggle to sort of get back to the middle. So I'm going to give you 2 what I feel are real world examples using other friends. We'll discount, friend A who calls me all the time. But I've got a friend who lived in the mountains of the East Coast. One day, a mutual friend of ours, someone we both knew, called him up and said, hey, I'm going to be going on this awesome Colorado rafting trip, and I would love for you to come. I'm going with my wife, and maybe you want to come. My buddy that is being asked this is not married, but he's got a girlfriend, and he's thinking, yeah, this would be a great way to impress her and go to Colorado and do something totally different. He says to the buddy, yeah, I'd love to do it. What's that going to cost? And he says, well, it's about $1,500 a person, but it's all inclusive. It'll include the flights and the hotel and the stay and the whole river rafting experience. Say $3,000 for a couple. My buddy has to think about this for a second, because this would be the first chess move, saying, yes, I'm going to do the trip. He decides, you know what? I've got $5,000 in the bank. I've saved up a little bit of money. Everything's going okay at work. I think I'm going to do it. So he tells his buddy, yeah, give me a day to get back to you. I got to talk to my boss, but sounds like a good deal. That's the first chess move, is he decides he really wants to do that and spend the $3,000. But he's got the money in savings. Then he goes to his boss and he says, hey, I know I already took my vacation this year, but I've got this opportunity to do something really cool, and I'm ahead at work over here at the office. Do you think it would be okay if I got a week off? And the boss says to him, I think it will be all right. I can give you the week off. It's going to be a week without pay. You already used up your vacation time, but if you're okay with that, then you can take the week off. So he plans the trip, tells his buddy he's going to go. So that's the second chess move. You see, taking a week off of work for him is kind of a big deal, because he makes really good money. He makes $2,000 a week take home. And not going to work for a week means he's going to lose that $2,000. So on the one hand, He's going to spend $3,000 to go do this great trip. On the other hand, he's losing an additional $2,000, right? So it's really like this is costing him $5,000. It actually is costing him $5,000. But once again, he's got $5,000 in savings, so no big deal. Now there's another couple of chess moves that happen with friend A, though. See, he goes on the trip, and of course, he decides he's going to take some pocket money, like $500-600. But while he's there in Colorado, him and his girl decide, well, it would be cool to have some waterproof jackets, and it would be nice to have some better boots and maybe some matching backpacks. And of course, food was not included in that original $1,500 ticket. Now he's feeding, himself and his lady friend for a full week, 2-3 meals a day, eating out. He ends up blowing about another $1,500, he tells me. So you have the $3,000 for the trip. You have the $1,500. That's $4,500 out of his $500 that he, $5,000. That's $4,500 out of his $5,000 initial savings that he had. So now he's running really close, to the edge of his safety net. But this is still not a problem. He comes back, he goes to work, they enjoyed the trip, everything was great. Maybe it cost him a little bit more than he planned. So he made a few chess moves. Now it's 2 weeks later. His boss calls him into the office and he says, listen, I've got some bad news. As you know, we have totally been hemorrhaging in sales. We're not making a lot of money right now. And in order to try and get this company back where I need, I'm going to have to let a lot of people go in your department. You will be getting a severance, but I'm going to have to lay you off. That's not to say you can't come back in a few months, but as far as right now, we have to do some cutbacks if I'm going to try and salvage this business. Of course, he's got to accept this. There's nothing my friend can do. So here he came back, and now already he's saying, I just lost my job. I ate up my savings, taking a second vacation that I really shouldn't have done. And I know that losing the job was a little bit out of his control, but that was sort of like the final chess move, even though it wasn't made by him. Life throws stuff at us all the time. So on this version of the sliding scale, wherever he wasn't in a super great place, but he had a little bit of money saved and he was doing okay and he had a pretty secure job. But, in tech, anything could change overnight, and he learned that the hard way. I would say that on the sliding scale of success, he went backwards. Definitely 2, 3, or 4 notches. And now he was highly stressed. And next time I talked to him, he was basically asking me for advice on what he should do. And I said, you should have called me before you went on this trip. So that's the best advice I can give you right now, but you better start hunting for a job. Get your resume out there. Friend number 2, I actually haven't talked to this guy in a long time, but he is partners in a firm, and we go way back. He's on the East Coast, and he's still, to this day, working in that business in a lesser capacity because he's semi-retired. But he started a firm, a consulting firm for businesses. He was one of the partners, kind of not a senior level partner, but he was, one of the partners, and he was doing pretty well. One day he gets a phone call. He's sitting in the office, and he gets a phone call, and it's completely unrelated to his business of consulting and financial planning. One of his buddies says, hey, I have a really interesting financial opportunity that just came up. I've done some work with a contractor in the past, and I've invested in his projects. They're called REITs. And he goes, I invested in his projects, and I've made a lot of money, and he's looking for 2 or 3 investors on his next project. My buddy says, well, what is it? And he says, he's going to build some senior centers and some, old folks housing. When someone gets retires and maybe becomes, incapacitated, sometimes they go into these homes, right? These senior centers. And he goes, they're wildly profitable. I've done extremely well. And he's about to build a couple more units on this part of town. And he's looking for 2 or 3 investors. There's a couple of catches, of course. The first one is he's looking for $250,000 as an investment, and he's only taking on, 2 or 3 people on this project. But he also tends to pay out between 10 and 15% on these REITs. The second catch is that it takes 2 to 3 years for this to come to fruition before you'll start getting paid. He goes, obviously, he uses the money to go in and break ground and build these facilities and then staff them and get people housed in them. So this is at least 24-month process, sometimes as long as 3 years before you'll start seeing some income from your $250,000. My buddy has to think about this. He has the $250 because he's done really well and he has saved all of it. Like, he just tends to not spend a lot of money. He does not live above his means. He drives very normal cars and lives in a very normal house, and he has saved this money. But of course, this is his POM, right? This is his peace of mind money. Sure, he still has some other money in savings, and you've got some money working for him, and he works. He has his business. This is money that he would have to literally leverage into an investment. So it's a little scary. So he says, let me think about it. He comes back to his buddy 24 hours later and says, it seems like a good opportunity. I appreciate you inviting me in. I'm going to do it. So he decides to level the $250,000 in this investment. At the same time, his boss comes to him not a few days later and he says, listen, I know you're working hard and you are one of our best consultants. Like, you make more sales, you bring in more clients, and you've done extremely well here. But I have two guys under you that are kind of new and they're not doing as good. They're kind of struggling and they're doing a good job, and I've got high hopes for them because they both remind me of you, but I would love for you to take these guys and train them, sort of be their mentor and take them under your wing. I know it's going to be more of your time. I know this is going to be time consuming to take these two guys on for what might be a year or more to really get them up to speed, but I think they could be two of our biggest earners, and I would love for them to get personally trained by you. I am willing to give you a little bonus in pay because you're going to have to work more hours. You're going to have to cut out of your schedule some time to work with these guys individually. Also, there's going to be a bonus involved. I know they're going to bring in more business. I know they're going to do good, so I'm willing to give you a piece of that and give you a yearly bonus on what they now do. He starts to think about it and he says, I've got to talk to my wife. I mean, I'm already, working very hard. I'm doing well. I'm not complaining, but this could be, take a lot more of my time. And I do appreciate the raise and the bonus, but, I need to think about it. So he goes home, talks it over with his wife, and says, this could be a good opportunity, but I'm going to have to work even harder. You might see me less. I may have to stay later. I may have to pull a couple of weekends, really trying to get these guys up to speed. So him and the wife agree that it's a good idea, and it's for short term. I mean, maybe this is going to be for a year, maybe a little longer, but he thinks it's a good idea. So he goes back and he tells his boss he's going to do it. Then he starts to think on his own, I'm going to have this little bit of extra money coming in, plus the bonuses. We don't know what those are going to be, but I don't owe that much more on my home. My home is almost paid off. He owed about $80,000. I know for a lot of you that might seem like a ton of money, but depending on what the house cost, $80,000 may be a small balance, which is what he thought. And he said, I think I could get this paid off in 2 or 3 years using the additional pay and my bonus money and just throwing it at the house, because I would love to get, rid of this mortgage, which was a little over $2,000 a month. He makes 3 chess moves here in a very, very short period of time. So wherever he was on the scale, he decides, I'm going to make this investment with the $250K. I'm going to take this opportunity that my boss has just offered me to make a little bit more money, plus some hopefully potentially sizable bonuses. That was chess move number 2. And the third chess move, he kind of made all on his own, right? That's like, I'm going to pay off these bills. I have this balance on this mortgage. I would love to get this off my plate in the next 2 or 3 years. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to put all the extra money into that and eat that mortgage up. Let's fast forward 2.5 years. 2.5 years goes by, and the investment starts to pay. He makes a little bit of money. Of course, they start to pay out at the low end, but it still is the 10% they promised, which was the minimum. And now he finds himself bringing in an extra $25,000 a year just on this REIT, on this investment with the real estate. He has trained these 2 apprentices as he's making some bonus money on their sales. And he has also, it took him about 3 years, of course, so another 6 months after the 2.5 years, but he finally did get his house paid off and he ate up that $80,000. Now, in this case, if we were looking at him and the chess moves he made on that sliding scale, his 2 or 3 or 4 moves all pushed him closer towards security and comfort. So now he finds himself starting to ask some questions like saying, wow, maybe I could take early retirement, or maybe I could free up a little bit more capital and look for another investment. Maybe I should shovel a little bit more money into my long-term retirement fund so I can have an even more smooth transition when I stop working. What happens when you do this, when you reach that point of comfort and security, you're able to look for opportunities. So what I want you to do is start to ask yourself that simple question. On the sliding scale of success, Where might you be? Are you 2 or 3 chess moves away to closer to success, or are you 2 or 3 chess moves away to broke, poverty, and struggle? Just knowing where you are and answering that question honestly, I guarantee you will start to make changes in your life, because it's going to force you to think differently. And you're not only going to start asking questions after asking that question, like, what can I do? What chess moves could I make? Is this move I'm about to make putting me closer to financial success and gain and comfort and security? Or is this move I'm about to make potentially putting me in the direction of broke, poverty, and struggle? Also, it's going to force you to see opportunity where you never saw opportunity before. I want you guys to find the best path, but it starts by knowing exactly where you are. So ask the question, am I closer to one side of success or closer to the other side of broke and struggle? My name is Daniel F. Margasa. You are watching the Almost Criminal Millionaire channel. And if you enjoy learning about the topics of finance, money, and how to improve the health and wealth of your bank account, then please like and subscribe for more. And feel free to follow up with any questions that you want to know more about.